Elias Vance felt the ship lurch just as the first orbital station disintegrated. The flash came from the left viewport, a white flare edged with hard violet. Debris spun past the cockpit, trailing fire. The proximity sensors spiked, then went dead. High impact registered. Distance 92 kilometers, said the AI. Object classified as former United Defense Outpost. Status: airborne scrap. Vance didn't respond. He adjusted the throttle and watched the sky fracture. The Vexar Armada had arrived. Their warp signatures had triggered no early warning. 1 second the sky was clear, the next 3,000 alien warships were locked into formation above the Earth. Earth's satellites blinked out one by one. Some exploded on contact. Others simply vanished from the system grid. Vance caught sight of one, an old civilian comlink, crushed in the gravitational wake of a dreadnought passing overhead. The Audacity was already airborne when it happened. Scheduled for a routine data run toward Mars, it had just broken upper atmosphere when the attack began. That saved them. No one was looking for a freighter, especially not one running silent. The ship's hull rattled again. The main defense cruiser, the UDS Cromwell, launched from geosynchronous orbit. It opened fire, a full spread of kinetic rail rounds. They hit the lead Vexar ship and bounced off, redirected mid-flight by energy diffusers. 2 seconds later, a Vexar plasma beam tore the Cromwell in half. Vance saw it with his own eyes. 1 second it was there, the next its forward hull collapsed inward, crumpled like soft metal. A bright burst of coolant shot from the side, then nothing. Allied fleet presence neutralized, the AI reported. Earth Command has not issued tactical rechecking, probably because they're vapor. Keep us dark, Vance said. His hands were steady. Course correction. Minimal burn, no heat spike, drift vectors sustained. We look like debris. For now. Good. From his viewport, Earth was turning red. Not slowly, not from sunset, from impact. Vexar kinetic weapons were hitting the surface in calculated waves, not targeting military bases, not focusing on resistance points. They were firing on population density. Grids of urban lights vanishing in sequence. He tapped the internal channel. Patel, we're going blackout. Check the mesh. We don't breathe unless you say it's safe. The reply came after a pause. Mesh integrity is solid. Radiation shielding's holding. You've got 6 minutes before I need to cycle O2 from auxiliary. He watched a civilian shuttle veer into view. No transponder, probably trying to flee. It made it 10 kilometers before it was hit by an energy net. The ship broke in 3 places and didn't even explode. Just froze, dead in space. New broadcast, the AI said. It's Earth Command. The screen cracked on, grainy, distorted. Commander Yoon's face appeared, framed by red light. All non-combatant vessels, this is your final directive. Engage evasive protocols. Do not return to lower orbit. If you're capable of blackout, initiate now. Repeat, do not die stupid. Vance leaned back in the chair. Same Yoon. Even at the end, she's efficient. The AI replied, Shall I compose a farewell note? Something tasteful? Keep your poetry offline. Below them, a landmass was breaking apart. Vance couldn't tell which region. Cloud cover was too thick, but the Vexar weren't slowing. Every strike was coordinated. Nothing was random. There were no warning shots, no posturing, just systematic erasure. Vance, Patel said over comms again. Engine coolant leak in auxiliary line, minor. I've sealed it. If it's a temp spike, they'll see us. Then we don't spike. The Audacity wasn't armed. It had stealth mesh, a jump drive, and a cargo hull barely reinforced enough for meteor fragments. It wasn't built to fight or flee. It was built to move sensitive corporate data fast, which made it the only reason they were still alive. AI, Vance said. Any signs of surface-based retaliation? Several launches detected. 5 seconds flight time, all neutralized on departure. One payload actually reversed trajectory and detonated at source. Vexar appeared to have counter-launch predictives. He tightened his grip on the control panel. The silence wasn't peace. It was absence. No comms chatter, no signals bouncing across the system. Earth's entire network had dropped below detectable levels. They weren't being jammed. There was just no one left to transmit. Another body drifted past the viewport. This one in a suit, civilian, spinning slow, untethered, no heat signature. Vance didn't flinch. How long can we hold stealth? If we shut off internal thermal control, limit life support, and reduce drive core to idle, trickle. 74 hours. After that, we become a floating tomb. Better a cold tomb than a hot one. Good attitude, the AI said. Would you like a blackout curtain for the apocalypse? The corner of Vance's mouth twitched, not a smile. From his seat, he could see the edge of one of the orbital factories breaking apart. It wasn't from a hit, it was from collapse. One beam had been severed by kinetic impact, and the entire structure had rotated too fast under its own gravity. Metal ripped at anchor points. 1/3 of the hull folded inward. No fire, no drama, just raw failure. He keyed the comm again. Patel, any survivors on comm bands? None. I've cycled every frequency. We're alone. All right. Keep the mesh stable. We're going to drift in shadow. And then what? Vance didn't answer. He checked their orbit path. The Vexar had moved on to the far hemisphere. The cleanup wave was probably in progress. Sift through what remained, erase the rest, mark the system dead. Let me know if anything gets within 20 clicks, he said. Will do. He stared down at the Earth. The cloud cover was thickening in places where cities used to be. Dust plumes, ash layers. It looked like weather. It wasn't. This wasn't an attack. It wasn't war. It was cleanup. The Vexar hadn't come to win. They came to erase. And they almost did. The audacity didn't escape because it was brave. It escaped because no one noticed it mattered. The debris field had no end. It wasn't a belt, not a zone. It was a layer, thick, uneven, spinning. Everything that used to define Earth's orbital infrastructure now drifted in pieces. Hull panels, habitat rings, coolant tanks, torn solar sails, frozen bodies. The Audacity glided through it without power, trailing no signature, lit only by the occasional flicker of cracked cockpit glass catching the sun. Velocity stable. We are now indistinguishable from trash, the AI reported. Then added, mission accomplished. Captain Elias Vance didn't look up. His focus stayed on the viewport. A torn shuttle floated past. A civilian carrier, nose gone, hull venting ice in steady streams. Inside, bodies were slumped against the walls, held in place by seat restraints. No heat signature, no life. He tracked it until it rotated out of view. Patel, he said over the intercom, how's air management? Scrubbing's down to 70%, she replied, voice flat. I'm rerouting through backup. It's slow. Slow's better than visible. You find anything usable? Couple of tanks in the drift. I'll have to suit up. Keep the tether short. Rhea Patel didn't argue. She rarely did. Her section of the ship, engineering bay, lower deck, had turned into a scavenger's lab. Every piece of foreign metal they pulled in, she catalogued. Every corpse she searched. Not for sentiment, for gear. 5 hours ago, she'd stripped the oxygen tank off a dead officer floating outside an abandoned drone platform. The man's helmet had a family photo stuck inside the visor. She took the tank, left the photo. Now, she was prepping for another run. You sure this one's stable? Vance asked. It's not moving fast and it's not venting. Good enough. He checked external sensors. The target was an old tow rig, one of Earth's construction platforms. Broken midline, still had its cargo clamp. Probably nothing useful inside, but if it held compressed air or shielding, they needed it. The Audacity stealth mesh was designed for short-term blackout, not extended drift in high radiation zones, and certainly not while sharing orbital space with pieces of burning defense stations. Patel's suit seal clicked on the channel. Exiting now. Vance watched her cross the airlock, tethered to the hull by a carbon thread line. Her movements were exact. No wasted motion. She reached the platform in under 2 minutes and attached a clamp to keep it from rotating. Her boots touched the broken hull. One hand steadied. The other pulled a cutting tool from her pack. He waited. No alerts. No spikes. The Vexar hadn't returned. The AI spoke up again. Would now be a good time to bring up the part where we're using civilian-grade life support systems to hide in the middle of an alien war crime? No, Vance said. Bring that up never. Understood. I'll save it for our memorial plaque. He let the sarcasm slide. The AI's tone hadn't changed since launch. Even when they watched Earth's surface light up like a furnace, it had continued reporting with the same casual rhythm. Patel reappeared in the viewport, hauling a tank almost as large as she was. She drifted carefully, used the tether to slow her momentum, and made it back through the airlock. Vance waited until the seal's cycle, then spoke again. What'd you get? Emergency reserve? Almost full. 2 cracks in the outer shell, but the lining's intact. Should last us another 30 hours. He nodded once, even though she couldn't see it. Patil's voice came through again after a moment. I saw something else. What kind of something? There was a kid's toy, floating near the tow rig. Looked like a plastic wolf. Claw marks on the side. He didn't answer. She added. There was a suit near it. Small. No oxygen tank. The seal was broken at the neck. Still, he said nothing. You want me to bring the toy in? No. Copy. There were rules for this kind of thing. You didn't let yourself look at faces. You didn't touch anything personal. If it didn't give air or power or food, you left it behind. Patel followed the rules. She drifted again 2 hours later, pulled 3 intact EVA packs from a shattered cargo pod. One of them had a half-burned patch from the Martian diplomatic corps. Vance made her scrub it for tracking residue before letting it inside. AI, he said, once they were locked back in. How many ships still broadcasting civilian tags? The system scanned. None. Military? None. Anyone? There was a pause. 3 pings detected in deep shadow orbit. Low power. Inconsistent. Could be buoy echoes. Could be dead beacons. No heat signatures? Negative. Then it's just us. Yes. Lucky you. Vance powered down another system. Every kilowatt counted. The fewer signals they emitted, the less chance the Vexor's cleanup patrols would notice them. Patel came up to the cockpit. She didn't speak for a while. Just stood next to him, watching a twisted satellite spin slowly in the distance. It was cracked down the middle, solar fins folded in like broken wings. I've got an idea, she said, but you're not gonna like it. Go on. There's a Vexor scout wreck, half a K out. Looks partially intact, some of its shielding is still active. Could mask us. You want to hide in a Vexar ship? It's not emitting, the core's dead. If we anchor underneath its spine, we'll read as organic hull debris, camouflaged by corpse. The AI joined in. Clever, if disturbing. Vance looked at her. You really think it'll mask our heat? Their hulls self-regulate. Even dead, the insulation lingers. It's better than drifting out here naked. He nodded. Get your tether ready. We're moving. They weren't hunters. They were roaches under the floorboards of a burning house. The Vexor scout's wreck didn't look dead. Even torn in half, its hull pulsed. Not with heat, not with light. Something else. A low, rhythmic throb that shimmered across the organic plating like breath through sealed flesh. Every few seconds, a thin layer of bioluminescent green moved from stern to bow and vanished again. Still think this thing's a corpse? Vance asked, arms crossed, standing at the edge of the airlock. Patel stood beside him in the pressurized suit, helmet off, eyes locked on the screen. It's not broadcasting, that's all I need to know. She clipped the tools to her belt, ran a systems check, and popped the seal on the outer door. Tether secured, she pushed off. The Audacity remained latched to the Vexar hull by a grapple line, but Patel moved independently now, drifting toward the ragged opening near the rear flank of the alien vessel. Inside, the tech was worse. Worse because it wasn't tech. It was gross. She stepped into a corridor that looked like part of an animal's ribcage. The walls flexed slightly as she passed through, not in reaction to her presence, but not ignoring it either. The interior temperature was higher than expected. Moist air condensed on the inside of her visor. "I'm inside," she said. Vance's voice crackled over comms. "Any movement?" "No, not unless you count breathing walls. Let me know if something starts talking." The room at the rear had partially decompressed, but a console, or what passed for one, still pulsed faintly. It wasn't made of metal. It resembled a dark bark-like substance with veins of soft gel running under the surface. Near it, the pilot's corpse was still wired in. Literally. Thin threads ran from the back of the Vexar's neck into the console and spine of the chair. His face was burned out from internal feedback, skin fused to the helmet seal. Patel didn't flinch. She got to work. "Pulling the interface node now. Looks like it's fused to the base stem," she said. "I'll need a heat cutter." "You sure it won't react?" Vance asked. "No," she replied. "I'm not sure about anything right now." 10 minutes later, she was back inside the Audacity. The tech was on her table. Vance looked down at it. "It's breathing. It's responding to temperature. It's not alive, it's reactive tissue." The black object twitched slightly as Patel brought a warm tool near it. Veins of red light shot across the surface and faded. "Looks like a heart." "It's a node. Command relay or data brain, or both." Vance crossed his arms. "You planning to talk to it?" "Not me," she said. "Him." The AI's voice chimed in. "Of course. When faced with alien neural horror flesh, always ask the sarcastic navigation software to poke it first." "Can you isolate signal layers?" Patel asked. "He gave me an hour." "You have 20 minutes. The next two passes were mostly silence. Patel cut deeper into the node, scanning every layer. No microchips, no circuits, just gradients of cellular density. The upper membrane resisted exposure, so she froze it. The reaction was immediate. Spikes of light, then a short pulse. The AI flagged it. Signal packet. Untranslated, running it through cipher matrix now. The screen filled with garbage data, strings of alien glyphs overlaid with half-corrupted noise. Patel leaned forward. Strip frequency, break pattern down to phoneme equivalents. Vance watched it roll, then slow. Demok. One sentence appeared in plain characters. "Do not return. Burn the path." Vance exhaled slowly. "That's not a status report. That's a standing order." The AI added, "Repetition across 5 nodes in memory sector. Substructure flagged for redundancy. It's an absolute directive." Patel sat down, staring at the translation. "Means they didn't just leave Earth," she said. "They made sure nothing could follow." Vance rubbed his jaw. "They burned our skies not because we fought, because we existed. They were cutting a trail behind them." The AI clicked again. "One moment, packet chain still unrolling. I've located a compressed data fragment. Language structure embedded with personality markers. Partial log. Unsigned. Play. It." The voice came through low guttural and laced with digital distortion. But words were words. System 9C Theta contained pre-reactive chem-flesh bipeds. Behavioral erratics observed. Non-standard aggression, irrational persistence, low structural integrity. Consensus recorded. Terminate. Purpose of action. Prevent curiosity. Visual patterns recorded. Optic organ dilation. Unshielded expression of grief during annihilation. Species unsuitable for salvage. Denotation assigned. Primitives with dying eyes. Vance said nothing for a moment. They watched us burn, Patel whispered, and they called it a reaction. They weren't afraid, Vance muttered. They weren't cautious. They didn't even analyze us. The AI added. They encountered something worse. Earth was not an objective, it was an obstacle. They removed it the way one removes heat signatures from an escape path. Exactly how many systems have they done this to? Patel asked. It's unknown, but the data node shows similar entries, 13 across multiple sectors. Always the same phrasing, burn the path. Vance stepped back from the table. All this time, we've been wondering why they didn't invade, he said. Why they didn't broadcast demands, set terms, offer surrender. They didn't care. Patel looked at the flickering node on the table. They weren't invaders, she said quietly. They were running. They weren't invaders, they were running, and we were in their way. The node didn't stop talking. After the first successful decryption, Sarcasm, the ship's AI, stripped down every recovered frequency Patel had pulled from Vexar comm logs, partial packets, intermittent pings, static bursts layered with organic signal markers. It took time. Hours stretched into cycles. They weren't listening for orders anymore. They were digging for reasons. Another cluster coming in, the AI reported, segmented language mesh consistent with distress broadcast architecture. Vance leaned over the console. Patel sat beside him, eyes rimmed with fatigue but steady. The ship ran dark around them. Only the glow from the terminal lit the cockpit. The new log was corrupted but not destroyed. The audio was partial. The text, however, was mostly intact. Sarcasm pieced together the message. Encounter vector collapse. Swarm of chains initiated forward incursion ahead of timeline. Burned colonies at edge space. Timeline error projected. Internal consensus. Purge all backtrail systems. Do not allow scent trail. Do not allow signal. Scent trail? Vance asked. It's metaphor likely, Patel said, not looking away. Or, it's not. Sarcasm continued parsing. Cross-referencing now. Phrase swarm of chains appears 12 times across separate data bursts. Related term, devourer, unnamed. No detailed entries, each mention followed by file erasure tags. Vance straightened. Wait. They deleted their own records? Yes. Not overridden, purged, recursive deletion flags. They weren't just hiding this from others, they were hiding it from themselves. Patel leaned closer. They're afraid their memories can be used against them, even after death. Vance tapped his console. Can we pull from ship logs directly? Any intact cores? Sarcasm replied. I've already compiled fragments from 7 Vexar wrecks in our orbit band. Each one has identical behavioral triggers. Memory cores initiate self-collect if accessed posthumously. Standard military protocol? Patel asked. No. This isn't clean shutdown, it's panicked scrambling. These logs aren't meant to hide information from enemies. They're meant to erase identity. Vance stared at the screen. Every recovered phrase pointed to the same conclusion. The Vexar weren't at war with the galaxy, they were retreating through it, fast, dirty, paranoid, like an animal chewing off its own leg to escape a trap. What the hell is the swarm? He muttered. Sarcasm processed in silence, then said, all descriptive data purged. Closest match. Formless pattern-bound predator. Feeds on logic states. Navigates thought webs. Origin, unknown. Nature, unacceptable. That's not military language, Patel said. No, Sarcasm replied. It's religious. They sat quiet for a moment. Outside the cockpit, the Vexor wreck still floated, a giant burned-out thing with organic plating curling in on itself like black petals. It pulsed less now, dying, fading, but still reacting. Vance spoke first. They didn't think we were dangerous, just there. An echo behind them. Patel nodded, and they couldn't risk letting anything follow, not even rumors. Sarcasm added, they kill what they don't understand. Lucky us. We were very confusing. Vance didn't laugh. He stood and walked down to the forward bay. There was a camera rig mounted near the airlock, a personal recorder. Corporate hardware meant for deep-run clients to log inventory or insurance notes. He switched it on. The lens whirred. No lights, no fanfare, just the red dot blinking. He hesitated, then spoke. This is Captain Elias Vance of the courier ship Audacity. We were in the upper atmosphere when Earth fell. We stayed dark. We're still alive. He paused. The silence didn't ask for permission. We've recovered Vexar data, enough to understand their motives. They weren't here for conquest. They weren't here to rule. They were running. Earth wasn't a threat. It was a gap in their maps. One they couldn't afford to leave open. He glanced toward the viewport. If you're hearing this, I don't know if there's anything left down there. Maybe someone survived in the bunkers. Maybe someone made it out. If you did, know this. We weren't wiped out because we were weak. We were wiped out because we were irrelevant. An afterthought in a war we didn't even know existed. Another pause, longer this time. I don't know what's coming, but I think we're not the only ones who've been erased. He hit stop, saved the file, labeled it simply, for the ones who outlived fire. Back in the cockpit, Patel was already building a translation array. She mapped every known phrase across 7 logs, weaving through glyphs like a surgeon through veins. Red strings of translation attempts floated across her screen. Each time they failed, she rewrote the structure. She didn't complain. Didn't guess, just worked. Vance sat across from her and reviewed the signal map. See anything useful? He asked. Failed thing. She didn't look up. She pointed to a narrow band buried in the data, a pulse string embedded in the deletion commands. The signal was short, repeating, masked inside the memory wipe itself. It's not a command, it's a destination. Sarcasm confirmed. Coordinates detected. Cross-center jump path looks like a dead zone, no star, no system, just space. Vance narrowed his eyes. They burned their way across the galaxy and that's where they're going? Patel didn't answer. Vance leaned back. They didn't plan to survive this, not long-term. This isn't war, it's ritual containment. And Earth was a buffer zone, she said. We were the airlock. Vance stood up. He didn't pace, he didn't rant. He just nodded, once, sharp. We need to give that story back to them, loud and in their own language. They didn't think we were dangerous, just disposable. That was their mistake. The Audacity had no weapons, no torpedoes, no pulse cannons. Its armor was patched with scrap, its stealth mesh held together by sealant and desperation. But it had one thing the Vexar hadn't accounted for: a liar with a processor. Sarcasm had already finished dissecting 37 intercepted Vexar-Com fragments. Rhea Patel had mapped their syntax patterns, decrypted structural redundancies, and stitched a near-perfect command line from broken phrases. Now they were going to feed it back to the enemy, with a few additions. Phrase integrity holding, Sarcasm said. Our signal spoof now mimics a rear-line destroyer's transceiver code. Status request tags embedded. Not enough, Patel replied. They purge static. We need a logic trigger, something they can't ignore without violating protocol. Vance leaned against the console. Like a relic-class asset warning, something religious. Patel nodded. Or existential. Sarcasm adjusted the packet. New payload suggestion. Insert the phrase human vessel emitting God code beacon. Designate as aberrant. Route to command. Vance raised an eyebrow. God code? In their framework, God code refers to artifact-level entropy signals. Unclassified tech. Danger. Tier Alpha. They think we're carrying one? Patel asked. They will, if we say it like we believe it. They uploaded the rewritten signal into a nearby derelict comm node still drifting in orbit. It was a dead relay, once part of Earth's early warning net. Vance had Patel retrofit the antenna with a Vexar signal piggyback on a background noise band. When the signal pulsed, it would look like a scrambled report from one of the Vexar's own scouting ships. No alarms, no blips, just one of their own logs, corrupted and overlooked. Until it got read. Transmission live, Sarcasm said. Estimated intercept in 8 minutes. Vance stared at the dead sky. Let's see if they flinch. They didn't have to wait long. The Vexar cruiser closest to the relay changed course. Not fast, not with weapons. It pivoted, just a single slow yaw in orbital position. Enough to bring its sensors to bear on the drift field. Scanning pattern detected, Sarcasm confirmed. They're probing our corridor, passive only. They're not sure, Vance said. They think it might be a glitch. Correction, they hope it's a glitch, Patel added. They sent another packet. This time from the Audacity's internal relay, bounced through a civilian sat-nav satellite fragment. This one was different. It was a voice. Sarcasm had studied the tonal signatures of Vexar command staff from partial logs, from pitch, from sentence length, from vocal symmetry markers. The AI replicated a mid-tier officer's voice and fed it through the node. The message was brief. Command ship Vratel compromised. Human vessel emitting unindexed God code signal. Suggest relocation of fleet path, possible breach in entropy corridor. Observation required. Caution. Vessel may carry active pattern contagion. Initiate containment if encountered. Containment in Vexar terms was specific. It didn't mean destroy. It meant avoid. Message embedded, Sarcasm confirmed. Encrypted as protocol echo. They'll assume it's from their own dead. Now we wait, Vance said. Outside, 2 more cruisers broke formation. They didn't engage engines, they just drifted out of sync. Formation instability in a military fleet wasn't panic, it was doubt. That was enough. Sarcasm spun the 3rd trap. This one was more delicate. Planted inside the targeting mesh of a long-range Vexar weapons platform. The code adjusted the fleet's IFF system subtly, rerouting a heat signature tag toward the Audacity, but modifying the classification. Not enemy, misclass, irregular. Patel leaned back from the console. They'll see us now, but they won't know what they're seeing. Correct, Sarcasm said. And that's worse than seeing an enemy. That's seeing a variable. Vance crossed the cockpit. Time for the voice log. Patel hesitated. You sure? Let's give them something they can't unhear. They recorded it in the same Vexar cadence Sarcasm had modeled. Cold, hierarchical, clear. Not threatening. Not aggressive. Just factual. Vance spoke the words while Sarcasm filtered the tone. This is Command, Captain Levereth, Vessel Zinor. Observation confirmed. The human ship remains. It has not broadcast. It has not fled. It waits. I fear this is not a species of conquest but of return. Coordinates uploaded, request guidance or forgiveness. They sent it as a final broadcast, embedded into the corpse of a Vexar scout ship, drifting near a destroyed weapons array. Sarcasm timed the emission to coincide with the next fleet data refresh cycle. They didn't hear a response, but they didn't need one. Alien POV fragment, classified entry / Vexar, Fleet Memory Core, 7DX. Status, Internal commander log / timestamp post Earth protocol. A fragment reached us. Burned. Incomplete. Designation unknown. Structure carbon composite. Signature God code beacon untraceable origin. Primitive form non-aggressive. It waits. It watches. It responds to nothing. Artifact classification possible. Weapon form uncertain. Fleet cohesion disrupted. Containment models insufficient. Consider abandonment of orbit. Reclassify system. Volatile. This is not the swarm, this is something else. Suggest erase path maneuver. But fire remembers shape. In the Audacity's cockpit, Patel powered down the broadcast gear. She didn't speak. Vance stood behind her, arms folded, watching the map. 3 Vexor ships had already changed course. 1 had jumped. Think they bought it? Patel asked. No, Vance said. I think they started doubting what they already believed. Sarcasm chimed in. We weren't aiming to fight. We were rewriting the ending they thought they'd won. It started with a misfire. 1 Vexara cruiser, designation Varnek 6, drifted slightly off formation and began scanning a nearby debris cluster. Nothing unusual, until its side-mount cannons adjusted without command. A moment later, it discharged 2 pulses into the adjacent dreadnought Jaltec 3. No warning, no follow-up, just 2 short bursts, and then silence. Inside the Audacity, sarcasm flagged the discharge on the tracking array. Friendly fire event logged, the AI reported. Fleet command has not responded. Adjacent vessels now repositioning without sync. Patel spun toward the screen. That's not formation tightening. That's goat, Vance said, watching the ships drift out of harmony like teeth breaking from a gear. They're not sure who's clean anymore. Sarcasm had already planted the logic traps. Ghost echoes of fleet directives, instructions copied and subtly modified from legitimate Vexor channels. All of them came with minor inconsistencies, slightly mismatched encryption tags, outdated clearance codes, false unit designations, enough to cast shadows over everything. They've purged comms so often, Patel said. They've created blind spots in their own networks. And now they're staring into those blind spots, wondering what's hiding there, Vance replied. On the tactical display, Varnek 6 began broadcasting a low-frequency burst toward high command. Sarcasm intercepted it and translated in real time. Possible signal contamination detected. Scout Wreck relayed human coordinates with entropy layer beacon tag. Earth anomaly status unresolved. Request weapon reclassification protocols. What's an entropy layer beacon again? Vance asked. Old Vexar designation, Sarcasm answered. Used for pre-civilization relics, artifacts with untraceable power sources, non-linear effect chains, or historical uncertainty. So, Vance said, they think Earth might have had something older than them buried under it. Patel shook her head. They're not trying to understand us. They're trying to explain their failure without losing command. A new comm packet burst across the board. This one wasn't directed. It was a fleet-wide signal. Orbit path compromised, human presence uncontained. Signal origins inconsistent with tactical predictions. Contagion event possible. Recommend entropy purge or withdrawal. Then came the sound they weren't expecting. A flash, then a blast. Jaltec 3, the ship that had been fired on first, turned its guns on Varnek 6, this time not with warning shots. A full salvo of kinetic darts ruptured Varnek's dorsal spine. Its orbit skewed, hull vented plasma, then broke clean in 2. Vance stood silent, jaw tight. Sarcasm chimed in. First confirmed kill, internal. Other ships began shifting, widening gaps between themselves. The formation that once moved like a single organism now resembled a broken constellation. Chaotic, jagged, self-policing. This isn't war protocol, Patel said. No, Vance answered. It's plague protocol. He keyed into sarcasm's uplink. Inject a new signal. Not direct command, just a whisper. Something small. Make it look like it leaked out. Sarcasm hummed. What would you like it to say? Vance didn't hesitate. Do not descend. Crust layer breached. Reawakening unconfirmed. The AI inserted the signal into a previously used channel marked as obsolete. Its delay made it look like it had been sitting idle since the first wave of orbital strikes. Within minutes, 5 different Vexar ships pulled out of Earth's shadow orbit. Sarcasm continued reporting. Multiple comms show increased internal encryption. Tactical orders now rerouted through fallback chains. They're trying to isolate nodes. Patel leaned forward. How many are still synced? Less than half. On the screen, one of the smaller patrol ships began circling. Not patrolling. Watching. The rest of the fleet stayed still, but tense. Their silence was louder than any broadcast. Inject another line, Vance said. This time embed it deeper, make it sound like an officer's field log. What contents? Vance took a moment. Say, second incursion likely. Human vessel may carry seed-class artifact. Memory lock ineffective. We should have erased the entire star. Sarcasm obeyed. The data entered the system through a melted-down drone recovered and spliced by Patel hours earlier. It looked like a casualty report on the surface. Inside, it carried the lie. Sarcasm filtered out any trace of Earth origin. Transmission camouflaged, now part of recovery log sequence from Sector 4B. Estimated fleet read time, 6 minutes. They waited. While they did, Vance opened the drawer beneath his seat. Inside was a military ID, scorched around the edges, the name barely readable. Lieutenant Darius Vance, United Defense Fleet, killed within the first hour. Elias looked at it for a long time. Patel didn't say anything. She knew. Everyone aboard did. There weren't many of them left to care. But the weight still carried. This isn't revenge, Vance said quietly. I know, she replied. This is a correction. Aboard a Vexar command vessel, the internal log crackled to life. Fleet trajectory compromised, unknown vectors emerging, signal noise shaping panic state algorithms. Human irregular detected. Reclassify Sol system as myth risk. Memory locks failing. Logic collapse likely. Deploy entropy failsafes or scatter. 3 more ships just jumped, Sarkaz announced. 1 didn't broadcast coordinates. Then they're running blind, Vance said. Correction, they're running from ghosts. He watched as more gaps formed. Another cruiser moved to self-quarantine behind lunar orbit. 1 fired warning shots at a scout drone that wasn't moving. The fleet was unraveling. Patel exhaled. All this from a few lies. Vance didn't answer immediately. Then, simply, a single lie well-placed can do more damage than 1,000 railguns. The final move didn't require a weapon. Just a name. Sarcasm found it buried in a corrupted core from a Vexar scout ship recovered near the outer ring. A string of coordinate glyphs, wrapped in 6 layers of redundancy, masked as a failed transmission loop. Hidden, but not random. What is it? Vance asked, arms folded, eyes fixed on the string. Sarcasm pulsed the answer. Origin tag present, cross-refreshing signature to high command encryption. Destination confirmed Vexar homeworld. Patel turned away from her screen slowly. You're sure? Match verified across 4 recovered logs. Internal designation, the last safe zone. Contextual translation, origin shell. Possibly cradle sector. They hadn't intended to find it. No plan had called for Earth to retaliate against a world it had never seen. But the Vexar had encoded their fear in every system they'd tried to hide. And fear leaves fingerprints. Vance sat down at the command terminal. Can we inject it into their live comms? Yes, Sarcasm replied. But for it to mean anything, we have to give it weight, a reason to notice. Patel nodded. We label it as hostile, make them believe it's compromised. She pulled up a blank command channel and began constructing a false alert. Every phrase mimicked Vexar logic. Report first, reason later. She included fabricated damage logs, casualty statistics, encrypted location warnings. At the bottom of the message, she embedded a single line in a code Sarcasm had forged by watching hundreds of Vexar chain of command updates. Target Priority 1, Earth Orbit Anomaly, Homeworld Path Compromised. The signal was prepped, encrypted, and disguised as a last-ditch relay from a fleet commander assumed lost during Earth's initial bombardment. The voice was synthetic but flawless. It sounded tired. It sounded real. Sarcasm launched the injection. Transmission piggybacked into Fleet Sector Linkage 9, bounce pattern set. They'll receive it simultaneously. What's the delay? 0, it's live. They watched it ripple. 1 second. 2. Then, movement. The first dreadnought jumped. No formation shift, no communication, no coordination. Just raw warp panic, executed by instinct. First jump detected, Sarcasm reported. Non-synchronized. Trajectory leads away from Sol, not toward fallback positions. Where's it going? Vance asked. To the coordinates we just uploaded. A second ship jumped. Then a third. This one collided with a patrol cruiser mid-alignment. The patrol vessel destabilized. Its rear section torn open by the energy wake of the departing ship. It spun off-axis and began venting plasma in all directions. Vance stood slowly. Patel was already pulling up a long-range array. 6 more ships just warped, she said, voice tight. They didn't even finish powering up before launch. Any signals? Sarcasm responded. No distress calls, no fleet coordination. They're not following orders. They're fleeing. The tactical map dissolved into chaos. Ships vanished off radar, not in a line but in bursts, random, desperate, unlinked. Some collided, others warped without clearing safe distance. 2 vessels blinked out at the same moment from the same location, overlapping jump fields. An action forbidden in any military protocol. Both disappeared. Neither reappeared. Fleet status? Vance asked. Sarcasm hesitated, just a second too long. 70% jump confirmed, remainder destabilizing. Orbit pattern dissolved. Command relays fractured. No unified signal remains. Outside the window, the stars shimmered with the afterglow of the mass exodus. The void rippled with quantum interference. The orbit over Earth, so full just an hour ago, was now quiet. Not clean, not safe, but still. Vance sat down. He didn't speak. Neither did Patel. The screen continued updating. Ships jumping too fast, systems tearing apart, warp engines shattering under uncoordinated stress. One vessel didn't complete its jump and burst into a spray of superheated gas. Another entered warp at the wrong vector and scraped across the edge of a fractured station, shredding a third of its hull as it vanished. They weren't evacuating. They were abandoning. They weren't thinking. They were remembering. Patel broke the silence. They believed it. They thought we got to their core. They thought Earth was nothing, Vance said. Then we made them imagine everything. Sarcasm processed the final report. Fleet designation Zarn detachment has ceased local broadcast. Final relay entry tagged the Earth system with new internal code. Myth risk zone / black access denied. Entry locked. Distribution halted. Vance stood, walked to the viewport, and stared out into what remained. Just debris. Just burn scars. No applause. No rising music. No banners. Just absence. You don't look satisfied, Patel said quietly. This wasn't about satisfaction, he replied. This was about memory. We had to make them carry it with them. He glanced back at the console, watching the echo signatures of the Vexar fleet shrink into silence. We never meant to chase them. Then what did we do? He paused, then said, We reminded them what it felt like to run. They left Earth behind not because they lost, but because we made them remember they could. The Audacity broke atmosphere under silent skies. No resistance met her descent. No targeting systems locked. No hails came from ground command. There was no ground command. There were no skies either, not in the way they used to be. Just smog-tick ash, swirling gray and red, casting the dead sun in a sickle of copper light. Elias Vance kept one hand steady on the throttle while the other braced the hull console, feeling every shudder in the ship's broken frame. Half the instruments were blacked out. The others flickered with ghost diagnostics. The last of Sarcasm's interface had gone cold before re-entry. No final joke, no witty sign-off. The AI's memory core simply degraded past recovery. And that was that. Below, the ruins of Earth spread in fractured patches. Burned coastlines, flooded craters, city grids torn like ancient paper. Nothing moved fast anymore. No contrails, no orbital shadows, just dust and what remained. They landed on what had once been a trade hub, now just a foundation ring of collapsed towers and a cracked plaza where pigeons used to land. The Audacity's landing gear hissed, struggled, and barely held. Vance stood as the hatch unlocked behind him. The air inside was stale. The ship was dying, not violently, just spent. Patel met him at the ramp. She said nothing, just handed him a worn data stick. Inside it, the collected wreckage of Vexor transmissions, Sarcasm's last compiled structures, and one final recording neither of them had dared play yet. He pocketed it. They stepped out into the wind. The survivors didn't cheer. They didn't need to. Word had already spread. No one knew how. Someone must have caught the signal before it collapsed. Someone must have whispered. There were always whispers, even when the world was burning. A small crowd had gathered spread across the square, 30, maybe 40 people. They came in whatever form the end hadn't broken, scavengers in armor built from car doors, children clutching torn blankets, medics with repurposed tools. One man wore the upper shell of an old EVA suit like a badge. Another dragged a cracked satellite dish behind him, using it as a stretcher for an unconscious team. No one held a weapon. They stood quietly, watching. Vance stepped to the center of the square. He didn't climb anything, didn't clear his throat, just opened a small portable recorder, set it gently on the cracked pavement, and turned it on. He didn't raise his voice, he spoke plainly. "We weren't spared," he said. "We were ignored." No one blinked. They didn't see us as a threat. They didn't even see us as a species worth documenting. We weren't strong enough to fight. We weren't important enough to fear. So we hid. We scavenged. We listened. He paused, eyes passing over the gathered. We survived not because we were better, not because we were lucky. We survived because we were inconvenient to kill, and when the enemy finally looked back to find us, what they saw scared them. "He is angry. At least that's what Lito." Patel stood off to the side. She didn't move, but her grip on the strap across her shoulder tightened once. "We didn't burn their fleets. We didn't crack their command codes. We just told a better lie than they could. One lie, well placed, can outlast 1,000 guns." And now? Vance looked to the sky, still empty, still wide. They'd run. They left Earth behind, not because we fought them off, because we made them remember what it felt like to run. He stepped back, closed the recorder, and placed it beside the foot of a young girl sitting on a fractured pillar. Her eyes were hollow, her face unreadable, but she nodded once. The wind picked up. Patel approached the ship. She pressed her palm to the outer hull. It was still warm, barely, fading. "We could wipe it," she said softly. "Take it all with us. Never let anyone see what we saw." Vance joined her. "We could." They didn't. Instead, They secured the data core, not to hide it, but to pass it forward. They wouldn't broadcast it across the stars. They wouldn't try to warn the galaxy. That wasn't their job. Someone else would find it, years from now, decades, maybe longer, maybe someone stronger, or maybe someone just as unacceptable. As night fell, though the sky stayed red, they powered down the last of the Audacity's systems. The lights dimmed. The hull stopped humming. What was once a courier vessel became a relic, a myth made of broken steel. Out in the void, in some distant sector whose name had been erased, Vexor ships floated in scattered clusters. None of them returned to Sol. None of them logged data from the final day. Their fleets collapsed inward, divided by suspicion, bound by a new mandate no one dared question. They deleted every Earth file, every trace, every coordinate. They sealed it in silence and marked the system only by a letter. Ek. They would never speak of it again. But they would remember it. They called us debris. Then they learned sometimes debris has teeth. What would you have done if you were Captain Vance? Fight back, or let the enemy fear their own imagination? Would you have broadcast the truth, or weaponize the lie? Let us know in the comments what you think the galaxy will remember about Earth. If this story gripped you, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more mind-bending, pulse-pounding HFY stories.